The other talk is extreme running, which may not strictly be associated with nerds, but well, we'll see how much of a nerd Leonie van der Haak really is. So without further ado, I would like to invite Leonie, there she is, to the stage, and give her a big hand, because she's the first speaker.
I'll take it as a compliment that we're going to see how big of a nerd I actually am. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Leonie. It's really good to be back here because I spent 9 of my life years studying at the University of Amsterdam, and this is actually the first time I'm back here. So the title of my presentation actually is "This is Spartathlon." Who of you knows what Spartathlon actually is? See, that's less people than StarCraft, but it's more than I expected. Good. For the other people, let me just explain what I'm talking about tonight. So what I'll do is I'll introduce the whole thing, which is called ultrarunning, and after that I'll explain a little bit how you do it, and especially why the hell you do it, because it takes up a lot of your time. And I was just talking to the other presenter like a half an hour ago, and he asked me, is there any coincidence between your hairdo and you saw his hairdo, right? He has a big helmet on. It's actually the statue of King Leonidas, and my name is Leonie, so we just found a few similarities. So maybe we have found the reason why I do this. It's just because I belong there. We look the same, our names are the same. But ultra running, to begin with, is actually something which you do when you cross the finish line of a marathon. So if you run further than a marathon, which is 42.2K or 26.2 miles, there he is again. You saw all the other slides now, so that's what we call ultra running. So that means a 50K race is an ultra marathon, a 100K race, and even 3,100 mile races, which is the longest ultra marathon in the world, also in New York. It's where the magic happens. So the Spartathlon. Could you go to the next slide? Thank you. I'm a personal clicker now. Why do people do that? Because the Spartathlon is a race of 246 kilometers. That's a lot. And there was one guy, 490 before Christ. His name was Pheidippides. Some of you might know this story. There was a battle in Marathon. And they asked Pheidippides, who was the messenger for the Athenian army, could you please go to Sparta and ask the Spartans for some help? Because the Persians are actually kicking our ass. No planes, no trains, no automobiles, so he put on his sandals, got some food, got his sword, and he went all the way from Athens to Sparta, which is roughly 250K. When he got there, it was actually 36 hours later. So he did the whole distance within 36 hours. He asked the Spartans, could you please help us? Could you please come to Marathon and help us in the battle? They gave him an answer, and ultimately he had to run back, because still there were no planes, no trains, no automobiles. So Pheidippides actually ran the whole distance back again, also within 36 hours. But we all know that Greek mythology is not always based on facts. So in 1982, there were a few British officers who thought, okay, let's test if it's even humanly possible to run from Athens to Sparta within 36 hours. I mean, can it be done? So they set out on an expedition, 8 of them. 6 of them never made it. They just broke down and cried, probably. 1 of them made it within 36 hours. So it was actually possible to run a 246K road in 36 hours. So in 1983, the first official Spartathlon was run. With only a handful of people, because not many people thought, yee-hoo, let's run all the way from Athens to Sparta. So every year, the participant number increased up until now. For the coming year, it's already fully booked, so if you feel inspired, you get home and you feel like, yes, I'm going to do this, you're going to have to wait for 1 more year because it's already full. And there's about 350 people now running every year. Now, anybody, wild guess, how many % of the people that start make it to the finish line? 80. 80%, nope. Somebody else? 12, well, pretty close. Only 1/3 of the people that start actually make it to Sparta within 36 hours. So it's still not a very easy job to do. So why the hell are we doing it? There's no sense. It makes no sense. Where's my clicker? Hi clicker, could you go to the next slide? So, I thought what better way to check with the world record holder in all distances between 100 miles and 1,000 miles, and also the fastest guy who ever ran a Spartathlon, 20 hours and 25 minutes. And this is what he has to say. You should use your brain more and train less. So in fact, what we could do here is if we think really hard, we'll end up in Sparta, right? Wrong. What he means is actually that just put on a pair of running shoes, go out there and run for hours and hours is not going to get you there. What you need to do is train smart. Now, this is where the nerdy stuff comes in. Yes. That looks nerdy, doesn't it? This is what we call a VO2 max test. So what athletes who participate in any form of cardiovascular activity, so that's a football player, rugby player, tennis player, runner, a rower, everybody who uses this cardiovascular system, what we want to know is how fit we are and what we need to put in our body to get the best out. And that's why we do a test like this, in which you actually get to the point where you cannot go on any longer or harder or further or faster. And they measure your oxygen intake and your nitrogen output. Now, if you put that in a whole series of calculations, you will find a kind of graph which looks like this, in which you can see what the zones are in which you should be training. And by zones, I mean what intensity. Because you can imagine that Usain Bolt, he can only do it for 100 meters because then he's dead. You need to train differently if you want to make it all the way to Sparta. So it's a different energy system that you need. So what you see here, actually, I'll just take you through the graph. I got told that people like graphs. I don't, so I made this myself with colors and stuff. What you see, actually, is if the intensity goes up, which means you'll be running faster and faster, you'll see that the amount of fat that you're burning while doing it gets less and less. But you also see that the amount of carbohydrates that your body is using goes up. So that means if you run faster, you'll burn more carbohydrates. If you run slower, you'll burn more fat. Now, why do we want to know that? That's because carbohydrates, you can store a certain amount of carbohydrates in your body. That's what runners always talking about. Eat pancakes, pasta, bread. That's because they want the carbohydrates to be stored in their body. Now the good thing about it is it's easy to burn. You don't need much oxygen. You can use all the oxygen for breathing and for other systems. You'll burn the carbohydrates. You'll be fine. Up until about 30K. Because then your carbohydrate will be totally done. You cannot refill it anymore. And you'll be stuck. Like, we call it the man met hamer. Yeah, so when you do a marathon after 30K, you don't want to go any further. So that's when your whole carbohydrate system stops working. You just need to figure out a way to do it by yourself. So that's not a pretty good way to make it, because there's 216 more K to go. So what we want to do is we want to burn fat. Ultra runners want to burn fat, not because they want to look skinny, but because fat is something which you have in a higher percentage. Any really skinny runner will still have about 15% body fat. And it takes a long time to burn that. The only downside to that is you need lots of oxygen, because it's difficult for your body to burn fat. So you cannot go that fast, because you need the oxygen for your energy, for burning the fat. So what ultra runners usually do is we run like this. Really slow, low to the ground, as efficient as possible. Make sure that you're not getting tired. Now, if you practice that, and you do that for hours and hours and hours and days and months and years, then your body will get used to that tempo. You can go faster eventually, but you'll be really efficient, and you only burn fat, and you cannot get tired. That's what you think when you start the race. You will get tired, however. Clicker. And then this is what you get. Your body will tell you no. This is not a good idea. Like after 100K, your body will tell you no. And then there's always the mental part, which is awesome, because you can fool yourself. You can. Like you can tell yourself, no, it's not hurting. No, it's not far. No, it's really nice and sunny. And in the end, if you're running out there all by yourself, sometimes in the middle of the night, strange things will happen and you'll start believing what you tell yourself. So your mental part of the ultrarunning is what eventually saves you. So most of the times when you look at a race, it's not the fittest runner that wins, but the mentally strongest runner that wins. And this is not like any stereotypical intention, but women are better when the distances get longer. Like there are even races, 6-day races for instance, where sometimes a woman will win before a guy. That's interesting, because that tells you that the physical aspects of ultrarunning are not as important as the mental aspect, right? So, lifesaver. You can fool yourself. But what is it that you do? Because running 246K took me 28 hours. That means you have to fool yourself for 28 hours, and a lot of things happen in your mind. Clicker. Do you remember the scene where Shrek explains Donkey that ogres are just like onions? Because onions have layers, ogres have layers. That was his explanation, but actually it makes sense because an onion has layers, and that's what happens with your brain when you're running. You'll start running, training, race, whatever. You'll go out there and the first thing you do is you start crying. And you wonder, why the hell did I go out? It's not fun, it's raining, I don't feel like this, I don't want to do this, right? And your brain is really active, thinking like, oh shit, this hurts, and I still have to make dinner, I have to call my friend, I'm gonna have to do my homework. That's the first layer, and it sucks. If you keep running for about 30 minutes, you come to the second layer. And the second layer is a bit more the bigger problems, like, okay, I still have to make a presentation. What do I put in my presentation? So you're running thinking, okay, I need to, yeah. That's the second layer. That takes you about 30 minutes to an hour to get to the third layer. Now the third layer is where it gets interesting, because that's why you start thinking about those bigger things in life. Okay, I just got a new job and I'm a manager now, and I'm worried about, okay, how do people perceive me as a manager? Those kind of things, like the bigger conceptual things. So I'm running, I'm like, yeah. And then sometimes I miss like a K or 2K, and I'm like, huh, I'm already here. That's the good part, because that's when you forget actually that you're running. But the core of the onion is where the party's at. And you only get to the core of the onion if you run for a few hours. So I'm sorry, if you're a 10K runner, you'll get to the third layer maybe, but the core is really for ultra runners. And that's where you'll find yourself really just being, not realizing where you are, what you're doing, and some people call that the runner's high. Ever heard of that? Yeah? See some runners here? It's the best. Like only after you finished your training or your race, you think, that was pretty cool. I didn't think of anything. It's just like meditating, but I'm not a hippie, so I wanted to bring it as a Shrek metaphor instead of a meditation metaphor, but it's pretty much the same. So, why do people do this, right? Why do you set out on a race for 246K? My boyfriend's in the room, he doesn't get to see me that often, because I'm always out running. I'll set my alarm clock at 3 in the morning and I'll go out at 4. He won't see me. There's no breakfast, no boiled eggs, no orange juice on Sunday morning because she's out running. So why do you do it? Clicker. This is where it begins. If people say, I cannot do something, I want to do it. That's number one. So it starts actually with the outside world. You want to prove to somebody, yes, I can do that. And I started out with a 500-meter run, and I was tired. And I never thought I could run 5K. But if you train your body well, and if you get to the core of that onion, you can push yourself really far and be really proud and tell everybody, see what I did? You told me I couldn't do it, but I could. There's one downside to that. If you're running and you cannot fool yourself anymore, and things start hurting and you're really like wondering, why the hell am I doing this? You should find an intrinsic reason. It's not about the outside world. It's a start, but it doesn't get you there. So in the end, what you really, really, really get out of ultra running for me, and this is the nerdy thing, I guess, is that you really get to know yourself better. Because you're so with yourself, there's nobody around you, there's hours and hours of thinking about the bigger things in life. That's what I get out of it. And I think, for me, that's really the most important thing. It's not the fitness, it's not the fact that I want to be cooler than somebody else. It's really the fact that you get to learn yourself so well, and beautiful things happen. So you've seen all these quotes of all these people, which sometimes have nothing to do actually with ultra running, such as Shrek. But there's one quote I want to leave you with, and that's my own. And maybe if you feel inspired, and tomorrow morning you wake up and you think, ah, that made sense. You can always call me and go out for a run. You won't be back for a few hours, that's for sure. But just remember this, that everywhere is within running distance if you have the time. So, and thank you very much for your time. I'll be around for questions.
So I hope you didn't think that we would be left without any questions. Sure, there are some questions for Leonie at the back.
No questions?
Yeah. So the biggest problem I had with running was just the knees, because you run too much and then the knees just go, and I wasn't able to get past that. What's your strategy then to deal with that? Is it just, am I just doomed as a runner, or is there a technique?
Well, it's definitely not a solution for everybody, but it's what I believe in, and that is that you need to strengthen your body by giving it no support at all. So if your knees hurt after 1 kilometer, take off your shoes, go to the beach, and try to teach yourself a really efficient way of running, which is landing on the front of your foot instead of your heel, making smaller steps so that the impact will be smaller, and all those things. I am a fan of like what we call natural running shoes with no support, no cushioning. If you strengthen your body and you do that slowly, in the end your muscles will grow stronger, and I hope you will be able to prevent injuries. So are we going for a run tomorrow? Okay.
Okay, I have a question. If you train yourself to have the willpower to ignore whatever warning signs your body are sending you, do bad things happen? And like do some people just drop dead because they have noticed they run out of energy?
Actually, it happened. It did. There is one race in the US and it goes through Death Valley. I mean, yeah. And yeah, there is a report of somebody who ran there and then really died, but I did not say that you need to ignore signs of pain. It's a mental thing. If I feel pain, that means I need to stop doing what I'm doing, because that's not helping your body. I mean, you need your body to get to the finish line, and if you break it, you won't make it. It's as simple as that. So you need to find out whether it's really pain you're feeling, or if it's fatigue you're feeling. And that's a difference which is really subtle, but there is a difference. Because your body sometimes gives your head signals which telling you like, oh, please stop this. And sometimes that's real pain, but sometimes it's make-believe pain. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah? So you need to find a way to distinguish the two. And then, yeah, you won't die then.
I have a question about the energy output and intake. Why is it not possible to just keep on eating glucose while you're running? Why doesn't that work?
You can actually, your body can handle about 90 grams of carbs per kilo that you weigh. But because you're using so much oxygen, your body needs that oxygen to fuel your muscles, to keep them going. So you'll have to split this small amount of oxygen between different functions in your body, plus your intestines, like everything which is like your gastro thingy. You have to eat. If you want to have carbs when you're running, you have to eat or drink it. And after a while, you'll need all the blood for your muscles and you cannot process anything anymore. So many people will either throw up or, yeah, the nasty stuff. So in the end, you can only fuel for a few hours, and after that, your body functions can't handle that anymore, so they can't process it.
What's the average speed you run?
Sorry?
What's the average speed you run?
Well, on a 10K, that's 15K per hour, and on a 246K, that's about 9K per hour. The longer you go, the slower you are. But that's a good question, actually. Does anybody know what the world record is in a 24-hour? 24 hours of running. Same round, by the way. Anybody? 250K? Yeah, for women, that is. Now, it's 303.5K, so that's an average of 12K per hour for 24 hours straight. Yes. So that's the average you could actually make. No, I'm not that fortunate.
So the bad weather thing, how do you train for like 50 degrees running? It's insane. I read stories like people walk on the white lines, the chalk lines of the road, because your shoes melt on the asphalt. So how do you train for that?
Isn't it fun? Ultrarunning is fun. Well, what you do, you cannot really prepare your body in the sense that you can simulate what you're gonna run in, especially if you live in a country like Holland where it's raining and cold. So what some people do is they'll build a sauna in their house and they put in a treadmill. Seriously. And they'll just run in the sauna for hours and hours. That's how some people do it. Personally, I don't think that you can actually prepare your body to run in such extreme circumstances. So what you need to do is make sure that all the other elements are fine-tuned to the max, and you're just gonna have to deal with 50 degrees. Drink. That's all, yeah, drink.
All right, I'm afraid we're going to leave it at that. Like Leonie said, she will be sticking around, so anybody who's interested can catch her up. So, just one more thing, because I want to thank you very much for this inspiring talk. And I mean, it's been the first sports-related Nerd Night talk that you gave, and I think we took it to the extreme straight away. I think so, and I for one am considering putting a treadmill on my sauna. So we always give a comic to our speakers, and for you we have something hopefully appropriate. It's the son of Spartacus. So give her a big hand, Leonie.